I've always had bad advice and I've not listened. That's the best advice, is not listening. It's the advice I give myself. So I was told, you'll never make it as a DJ. People laughed at me. A few years later, a few months after that, I was on Cool FM. The same people that told me I would never make it, radio station crashed. Other people laughed, said, "Oh, you won't be able to go further."
Mm-hmm.
2 years after that, I was on BBC Radio 1 Extra for 3 years with my own show.
Welcome back to another episode of Grind, Hustle, Repeat, conversations around creativity and culture with me, your host, Neodate Evans. Now, this is the show where we talk to creative entrepreneurs and discuss the ups and downs of their creative journeys, and hopefully by sharing, it provides guidance for others. Now, today's guest is a little bit different. My guest today started off in the creative industry, but has segued into the corporate world and is now a barrister. Now, many people will know him as DJ Footloose, who has enjoyed a phenomenal career, which included working for BBC Radio 1 Extra and playing throughout the world. But these days, he has literally gone from playing in clubs and bars to being called to the bar. So my guest today on Grind, Hustle, Repeat is Mark Robinson. Mark, how you doing, man? Thank you very much.
I'm good. Thank you. I'm really well. Thank you for inviting me on today.
No. You know, I was flicking through Facebook as you do, and then I can't even remember now the person that did actually share the story. And I read your post and I just found it so inspiring on so many levels. And so then I immediately just thought, no, I've actually just got to reach out to this guy and have a conversation. So what I wanted you to do, if you could, before like kind of jumping into the meat and bones of it, if you could just give people like an idea of your background, where you're from, where you grew up, and that sort of thing. And then we'll jump to, it was 2014 when it all kind of...
Yeah.
Right, yeah, cool. So over to you.
So I'm born and bred in Forest Gate, East London. I was put into care at 3 months old after my real mum broke my arm and leg as a baby.
Wow.
Ended up being adopted into a white family, had all kinds of problems, lots of bullying, abuse, that kind of thing. And in school had an absolutely horrible time. Obviously, the cultural differences I had to deal with. I was failing on every level in school. You know, I was in nearly the bottom set of everything. I have a condition called dyspraxia, which is developmental coordination disorder. And for basically what it means for you guys is that I'm the only black man that probably can't dance or kick a football. You know, when I've DJ'd, people are like, you look like you're listening to something completely different. And maybe sometimes I actually was, but yeah, nonetheless. So loads of problems childhood, you know, bullied a lot, useless in school, absolutely everything. I had no interest in school. I was excluded from one school, Forest Gate, then I ended up going to another school, Stratford. I didn't fare much better. I think I left school with nothing. I think I sat maths and then I got an F.
Oh, wow.
Which is failure anyway. So, and, you know, I got into a lot of trouble in my formative years. I was around a lot of the wrong people, some of those earlier name brand gangs.
Mm-hmm.
I think more, I wouldn't say always abused by the gangs, but like I was definitely out of my depth.
Yeah.
And I got arrested a lot up to between 15 and 16. Lots more antisocial behavioural stuff, to be honest with you. There was nothing that serious, I think. And I think around 1990, I got beaten up by the police badly in Dagenham. And 4 of them kicked the crap out of me. All my face was bust up. And I told my stepmom I tripped over resisting arrest. And I was really badly beaten up. And, you know, they called me black. they said, oh, I say they called me black, and then they said I never had no father. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
black and illegitimate
Yeah.
to be PC. So and then I think I got arrested for stealing a bike. And the thing is that the bike that was stolen outside this place in Ilford, I didn't actually do it. I was just there, and it was an actual school friend who actually nicked the bike. But the family come and see me a few months later and said it was me. And the funny thing was that same friend who stole the bike, he ended up getting arrested with me prior to that because I decided to steal a milk float. And this is the kind of madness we were doing when we was 15. And I crashed the milk float into I think it was a tree, or I saw traffic police, and then the police come running after us. They beat him up, because this is how it was in the late 80s, early 90s. You get beaten up. But I pretended I was having an asthma attack, and I was like, I can't breathe. And so
that's quick thinking.
Yeah, and then they never beat me up. They go, all right, mate. And then I didn't get my head kicked in that day, so they saved it for another day. But I mean, to be fair, I've only been beaten up by the police once. A lot more people have been beaten up all the time. But yeah, so that bike incident, I ended up being put on probation. I stopped getting in trouble for a bit, and then I went to youth training scheme back then. That was one of Thatcher's good ideas, YTS. Yeah. And I wanted to be an engineer, civil engineer. And obviously I didn't have the qualifications, but they were doing apprenticeships. So you could do your qualifications again and do the apprenticeship at the same time. No space for me on the apprenticeship. And then the only thing that was left was a joinery, which is carpentry. And I stuck it out for 2 weeks, and wasn't for me. I mean, Jesus Christ was a carpenter, and there's plenty of other famous carpenters, but for me, it just wasn't for me. So I quit there, and then in the midst of that time, I'd started driving recently, and there was a local bad boy whose name shall remain nameless, and he's full of gold chains and busto, and everyone looked up to him. But he seen me driving in Manor Park, and he said, "Look, you're coming with me tonight, or I'm going to do you." It wasn't really serious, but he made me go with him to a hardcore house rave in Tasco Warehouse, Plumstead. And I'd been to an odd event there before, and I'd experienced it just briefly at the beginning of that year, like late 91, but it didn't hold me. But this occasion, whatever it was, I went there, and I was given a pill, ecstasy tablet, and the world changed from then on. I was so inspired. A week later, I got my savings together, and I bought some dodgy belt drive decks. I started buying hardcore jungle. And I literally locked myself away for how many months practicing DJing.
So how old was you now at this time?
17 years old. Right. And so 17, it was a summer, I think July 1992 is when I bought the decks. I think maybe the 7th of July. I think it was a week after I passed my driving test. But it was, I was enthralled by DJing. And then from there, I started to get further into it. And then I put some demo tapes together. And my demo tape went to this club called Overdose, which is a good name for a club, an event rather, Fish Club on Oxford Street. And so my first gig playing out was in September of 1992, and I did the first warm-up set. It was good. I think I did okay, and I improved as time got on. But then in 1993, I wanted to get on pirate radio, and so I did another tape for Cool FM at the time. And they said that you beat 45 other people around about that, because loads of people wanted to get on there, and I got a show, and it was like, was it 3 to 5 in the morning? Was it 5 to 7 in the morning? But it was Cool FM, went on to be the biggest jungle drum and bass station of its day. And that kind of gave me a springboard for drum and bass. So that progressed, and I started doing more gigs. And I got better technically as a DJ. I practiced more, and I started playing at the telepathies, and then the roasts, and then the more of those name brand jungle events. And it went well up to a point, and then I never really, can't say I really broke through to the big league. Even I did a few good tunes with Juice and Splash Records, but I never really broke through. I don't think so anyway. But at that point, around 97, there was this promoter that came to a club where we was playing in Terminals, and he said, look, I'm an American promoter. Would you like to come to States? So gave him my details. Then lo and behold, a year later, he booked me and Skibbity to go to Seattle. And then we did LA, we did Vancouver, we did San Francisco, we did Philadelphia, we did Minneapolis, and it was insane. And I was 23 years old when I went 1998. And imagine a young guy going out to States for the first time. It was sick. And then I started playing out States like, 3 to 4 times a year, up until 9/11. And I was having a whale of a time. I even started to do some garage sets because by the time 98 came, I started getting heavily into UK garage. From 96, I was into it, but I started playing out more. And I was a jack of all trades. So at some events, I played Arena 1, Jungle, another room, drum and bass, and I played garage room. And things went well. And then I started doing a lot of the garage things. Like I did Garage Nation a few times. I did Twice as Nice a little bit earlier. And I did quite reasonably bit better in the garage. A lot of bookings. And honestly, it was a lot of fun. That garage days was fun. It was sexy, stylish, lots of champagne, lots of women. It was good times. And still doing a bit of the drum and bass stuff. Still had Going Abroad. And I was playing at Cool FM and Deja Vu. By that time, I'd gotten Deja Vu at that time. And it was good. So this went on. And then in the end, I kind of tailed off from the jungle, went completely into the garage. And then that went well. And then garage changed somewhat. It started to go into funky house. Yeah. Because what happened, there was the Soul Solid and that kind of stuff. It went down to the grime route. And I started off with the early
split. That was the beginning of the split, yeah.
I started playing early grime. I mean, I played that Pay As You Go, No Way, and I was playing at Ministry of Sound a lot. And I had my own events. And I started my own event because I wanted to hear that classic garage, old school garage feel. And so that went well, and then there's only so much old school you can play. So there was a few years of playing that, 3 or 4 years. And then we started to tail off towards funky house, and then that took over. And then from there, I think I started playing it, and I started playing at the Sunday scene. I think it was a thing that 2AD, they used to do a rave on a Sunday. I started playing there, and there was them Sunday morning events. I can't even remember. I think it was Dog Tanya and John and Angie B's things. DJ Boyce used to do things, and that was when I met Super D. And I used to do Hackney Central. They used to do quite a few funky things in there. And that was really good. And I was still on Deja Vu, and so that progressed. But what happened, there was a friend who was a manager from DJ Raskwami, who's now on Capital Extra.
Yeah, no Ras, yeah.
And his manager, Susie, and she hooked me up with some other guy. I can't remember his name, but me and CPD did a pilot show for BBC, and we put it together, and no feedback. And then what happened, there was a series of us to do individual pilots. So I did a pilot show in 2007. And it went well. I did a Sunday night show. It got broadcast. And they said, look, yeah, you've done good. It's quite a good show. But by that time, I was about 32. So they said, look, to be honest with you, you're too old. So we're looking for someone more 25. So I'm like, oh, fair enough. So I carry on playing on the underground scene and whatnot. And so with that being said, I was resigned to just staying on one level. Then a few months later, around about, I think, July of 2007, the executive producer of One Extra, which her name's Ruby Mulrain, she actually contacted me. I was in my old flat in Woodford at the time. She said, look, I've heard your pilot show. I'm really impressed. And if you don't mind, I'd like to offer you a contract. I nearly dropped down. Listen, brother, yeah. I was like, well, these things don't happen to me, innit? So I was like, wow. So they trained. I couldn't tell no one until it was released. Cause I was part of the big shake-up on One Extra. So they just removed Rampage. They removed Heartless Crew. And I came on with Trevor Nelson and Westwood and Sarah Love. So that, because it was just a small, only 4 of us replacing 12 DJs, that did wonders for my credibility. And I just had a tune called Just Leave. And I did with Simone, which came out on Yeah, the label that those guys from back to '95 run, it really escapes me for now. But so I'd just done that tune. The BBC named it the anthem of the summer. BBC One Extra. It went to #1 in the BBC One Extra chart. So going well. Got to One Extra.
You know what's interesting is because I started around 2005, 2006, and I was doing most of the trails and idents voiceovers for One Extra. So I've done a lot of voiceovers for you. But yeah. So I remember that shake up. But go on.
Yeah, so that time I did the show. I started my first show in the end of September 2007, and then bookings started flying in, playing funky house, and I mean the UK funky sound wasn't there yet at 2007. There's still a lot of American stuff I was playing, and I think the gigs were coming a lot more. Got a lot more bookings. I was getting, because BBC was One Extra was deemed as an urban station.
Yeah,
I started playing a lot of these R&B commercial places, and there was this chain of clubs around the country. I can't remember what they were. I called them Sharon and Chaser gigs, but I did a lot of that.
Were they the was it Novus Leisure?
Yes, I think it was something like that.
I used to do some events in some of their venues in London as well.
So I was doing all this Southampton, all these uni nights, and I was expected to play a bit of R&B, which I hated, and that went well. Then I ended up getting Dream Team's old manager, Tony Portelli, started managing me, and he got me a lot of remixes to do, and that went well. And I did manage to remix David Guetta's Sexy Chick, and I did that got to #1 in the charts. And Karaoke by Pitbull, I remixed that, and actually went on Now Dance in Australia. They're still on iTunes now. So I did some hits. Then I had moving into 2009, I did an album, Sounds of UK Funky, which was a triple pack of compilation album, which got to #24 in the album charts. It was me, Super D, and Pioneer, and that went well. And then I was playing up and down the country, but afterward, DJing started to get to me. I was in my mid-30s. I was starting to suffer from fatigue. Well, those guys around me were like 7, 8 years younger than me. I could no longer keep up at that pace. A lot of my friends that used to come out with me in the garage days had settled down. They'd got married, and raving, as you know, the older you get, it's not a priority. So those guys had calmed down. I was still going up north and on the motorway, and I used to play Midlands a lot, so Leicester, Nottingham, Birmingham, Derby, and I used to stay in a hotel at the weekend in Birmingham, most weekends, and it was a very lonely existence, to be honest with you. I started suffering from depression, and I weren't having a good time, and I kept on falling asleep on the motorway. And then I think one of my last gigs, early part of 2012, I was driving back from Bristol, promoter messing around with the money as usual, and I was falling asleep, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And then the last straw is I was doing events again. I used to run aquarium, as you probably know, and I had some wicked events there. And I was again aquarium Sundays, but it was really good. But we did that, and then we Absolute Sundays actually.
That's it.
And then
those
I had
Sundays.
They were, and especially when it got to the house days. But moving on from that, I had a friend who was I put on a party for his 34th birthday, and he got stabbed to death by someone else of our group, and unfortunately, I just thought enough's enough. I started seeking faith, and I met my future wife around that time, and I wanted to just do something completely different. So at the end I ordered my bookings up until the 31st of January 2013, and then I knocked it on the head. And then I wanted to do youth work, and I thought that was what I was supposed to do, but apparently not for too long. And then what happened, I had an altercation. My wife's ex-partner used to be a bit tasty with his hands to her, for want of another word. And me and him had an altercation. I was, on my part, I shouldn't have never have got involved, to be honest with you. Upon reflection, I probably had no right to get involved, and it was for them guys to sort out their loose ends and leave me out of it. And so, I put my hands up that, my actions weren't exactly right, but nonetheless, it kicked off. And then he ended up getting me done for ABH and accusing me of hitting him over the head with a hammer, which just simply didn't happen.
Okay.
And I mean, he hit me. I don't recall hitting him. And again, it went all the way to Woolwich Crown Court. I had a first legal team of solicitors. They were messing around, so I got rid of them. I was introduced, if you know of Leroy Logan, who's just done that the new BBC thing
Small
with
Axe,
Steve McQueen, Small Axe. He, for a good friend, he introduced me to the Black Solicitors Network, and in turn, I found an excellent solicitor from a firm from Amusi Robinshaw, who's still friends with me to this very day, Mr. Anthony Graham. So I big him up, and I got his firm, and then they took over the case. However, I had a very good barrister, but unfortunately, sometimes your trial's overrun. So you set your trial for 4 or 5 days. Yeah. Anything could happen where you end up doing 10 days. So his trial overrun. He couldn't do my trial. I was so vexed with the legal system. I said, you know what? I'm going to just do this myself, you know. And so I got myself together and I went to court for the day of starting trial. And I told the judge, who shares the same name as me, Judge Robinson. She tried to dissuade me from representing myself. And I decided, no, I'm going to do it. She said, right, I'll give you all the time you need. And I'll let you know when the trial is going to be. And I'll let you know after lunch. So break for lunch. She comes back after lunch. She goes, I thought about it. And we're starting now. And I'm swearing in the jury now. And you've got till tomorrow morning to read through all these bundles of evidence. And
what?
Yep. But guess what? I did it. I came back with my cross-examination and the complainant, I demolished him. I ran a bad character of all his previous convictions and and offences he's been arrested for, and he couldn't believe I did that to him. He got upset, and then the judge had to tell him off a few times. Yeah. And then the prosecutor turned to me and said, "Look, that complainant's not the brightest spark, is he?" And then the prosecutor took Mr. Jenkins. He's no longer with us now, but he was a great man, great barrister, and he took off his wig and went to put it on my head and said, "You need to do this for a living." And even the judge said, "You represented yourself admirably." Unfortunately, the jury didn't think so. So I got a hung jury the first time because they couldn't understand why the allegation was hitting someone over the head with a hammer, but there's no injuries. So anyway, one thing led to another. The judge told the CPS, which is the Crown Prosecution Service, to review the case. She gave them 10 days, came back to court in 10 days thinking that it's going to be thrown, it's going to be dropped. And CPS, the person who was meant to review the case was on holiday to that morning, didn't look at nothing, decided to go again. I think, as I understand it, the complainant still was wanted to go after me. I mean, he was phoning up my wife during that time saying, your guy's going to go to prison, doing all kind of schemes. So anyway, I went through more depression yet again. I started drinking heavily. You know, I had some drug problems, and you know, I battled drugs for a long time. I've been arrested for drugs in the past here abroad, and my consumption of drugs was quite a bit. But I don't do that stuff no more. Quite pleased to say. But yeah, I hit the bottle, I hit the drugs, but I started to have counselling. I got myself together. Fought the trial again. This time I got the transcripts of the last trial. I got an expert to see if his blood was on there. I wanted the DNA sample. He naturally refused to give a DNA sample because he knows why he didn't want one. And so I took him apart. You know, I took, you know, this time this independent witness didn't come. And it's funny, the prosecution said, "Do you want to plead to a lesser charge?" And I got it right down to a public order offence. And then in the end, I said, you know, I thought about it, I'm going to trial. And then the judge even said to the prosecutor, "Are you really sure you want to go ahead with this?" And so I did. And the complainant was a bit more arrogant this time. However, the medical experts came along and gave evidence. And this time I knocked it out of the park. I mean, so what happened now, just before when I did my closing speech, these barristers kept on coming in and out of court and saying, "Look, we watched you. This was in the canteen whilst waiting for the verdict, and you're really that good. You need to consider doing this for a living." One of them was a minister, a Christian minister at Ruach Church in Brixton, and she started praying, putting her hands out at the back of the thing. And she started saying, you know, God has put you through this for a reason. It's not about what you've done or not have done. You had to go through this to refine you. You have to be refined in the fire. And so it was all in one ear, one out the other. Them telling me we need people like you. I mean, look, I had no intention of going to university at that time. I had no qualifications. I didn't know the difference between a barrister or solicitor, and I didn't care either at the time. And this was only 6 years ago. This is the joke. Yeah. So I've gone, waited outside the court, got my Bible in hand, and then I've heard Mr. Robinson come into court 10, and there's this legal advisor, his clerk, and he was kind of, had a wry face, he looked kind of stern, not like the clerks in the last trial. Yeah. This guy looked kind of mean, but this time he'd said verdict, and he had a wry kind of smile like verdict. And I'm thinking, Then I've seen the judge ripping up all this paper behind the desk, behind the bench, and so then the jury's coming in, he's gone, chairman of the jury, how do you find Mr. The defendant guilty or not guilty? And there's only 2 words you want to hear. And they said, not guilty. And he goes, is that unanimous? Yes. Hour and a half. Boom. My papers went in the air. I think I started crying, like I was overwhelmed. And, and then the cheeky prosecutor tried to put an acquittal, post-acquittal restraining order on me from the complainant, and then the judge just, that's the first time I actually stood up and did the American thing. I went, objection, and the judge goes, Mr. Robinson, sit down. And then she just laid into the CPS. She said, how dare you come to this court? I've told you to review the case. There was no evidence of Mr. Robinson in the first place. You've carried on. The complainant should have been forced to give the DNA test. I find that the complainant is the violent one to Mr. Robinson and his wife, and I'm rightly refusing the restraining order. And then the prosecutor shuffled out of court with this is a different prosecutor, not the same guy that tried to inspire me to get into it. And he shuffled out of court with his tail in between his legs. Because it was a lot. Then the arresting officer that nicked me for the thing, because it's funny, I've never been in a cell for all of that thing. Yeah. When they first tried to arrest me, I just didn't open the door. And then I got a solicitor who made an appointment to go to Lewisham police station. And then I just was in there, had my interview and went. Never been in a cell over it. So the officer gave me some career advice. I was, look, that person that did your interview with you, they're actually an accredited police rep. Like, not all of them are solicitors and anyone can do it. So I looked into it, thought, this might be something I can do. Because I used to work for a company called Spark to Life at the time, which was run by Pastor Des Brad, who, again, he actually killed someone back in 1990. Unfortunately, he got manslaughter, but he became a priest, and he's done some amazing things in the community with youth work, won loads of awards, and his organisation, in my view, is one of the best youth justice organisations in the whole of London, if not the country. So I worked there, I was the project coordinator, and they encouraged me, said, look, you need some legal training. And I had been attending court and doing all this work alongside probation with MAPA panels and that kind of stuff, but didn't want to do a degree. But anyway, the solicitors firm that I told you about, Lucy Robinson, they actually took me on as a trainee accredited police rep. So I've just represented myself in court. Look in jail. I've been career advice from the prosecutor, taken off his wig, the arresting officer giving me career advice, and then being taken on by the solicitors firm. And so I started as an wasn't the probationary accredited police rep, which is the police accreditation scheme. So sometimes, as I said, when you go to a police station, it's not always a solicitor that will represent you. It'll be a police representative, which are trained to just deal with the police stations. They're lawyers, but then again, they're not. So I qualified. I did that course. But then the solicitor said, you need to do this thing called Silex Level 1 criminal litigation. And I went to do it, but because I just got diagnosed with dyspraxia, I couldn't get the support I need in this college that was running that course. So they said, look, go to Birkbeck, you'll get disabled student allowance, do the degree. So I thought, let me see what all this is about. I did a test to do the degree, some court case. I did it over the phone. They were so impressed, they offered me a place immediately. Wow. And then I just bust up uni. I mean, I was getting good grades. I mean, I missed out by a first in the end by that much. And this is a guy with no education. And I did. So once I got the help with my disability, they gave me a laptop. I had a MacBook Pro. I had a study skills support tutor who taught me how to do essay writing and do my grammar and all my spelling, because I couldn't do grammar or nothing properly before that. So that happened. And in the midst of all that, because I was still at Spark to Life at the time, Spark to Life had this young man who needed some paperwork dropped to his solicitors in East London. His solicitors called EHB. I went down there. This was in 2017. I told them my story, and then the actual guy said, "Look, you sound really interested. Let me take you out to dinner." And we're looking for a police officer. I'm like, "No, I'm not interested. I want to be a barrister anyway." But they kept on and on at me. In the end, I said, "I'm just gonna go." And I went to dinner with him, and then he said, "I hope you don't mind. I'm bringing 2 other partners from the firm as well." So we met. We had this brilliant dinner in Turkish restaurant in North London, and I said, "Look, we said about a training contract," and they said, "Look, we'd love to." That was drafted, and about a month later, I differed in signing it because I still thought I want to be a barrister, but then I found out you can cross qualify, which I have now just done. So that happened. Then I started my training contract. So training contracts usually you don't get until you've done the LPC. I had my training contract offer in the second year of undergrad, which is unheard of. And so,
so you
that
really
happened.
just must have a knack for law. Like this is.
Yeah, I know. I don't know
really,
why.
because by all accounts, you've never really been an academic person, but
No.
But
I ended up being an academic person, and I found my degree easy. Like when other students were whining out, I was like, "Is that it?" I just find it easy. Like they'll tell in uni, they'll tell us to just read all these 100-page judgments of court cases. Yeah. I'll just read the summary and know the salient points and put that in and still get a first in the essay. Like to me, it's like one thing with me. I work smart, not hard.
Yeah.
And where other students were struggling, for me, I enjoyed it, but I mean, it's just the way I worked.
Yeah.
And so I utilize technology as well, I think. So but I had a good time.
Let me ask you a question. So looking back now, looking back at Mark, I don't know, circa 2000 or so, can you see something in yourself then that'd make you be like, oh yeah, that was were you like, like even like when guys are out with their brethren and, you're doing banter and people can't get one over you in an argument or something like that. Could you see something in yourself back then that would make you say, yeah, this would be the road?
No, I've gone to court before. I'm representing myself on driving matters. When we used to run nightclubs, we sued someone. I did all the talking and I successfully sued someone. So it was always there. I went to housing court and I got a couple of people, I saved them from getting evicted. So I always had it, but I didn't see it. And I had to go through that to finally, like, God went boom, and there it was. And so I think this was almost my destiny. Like the way I got that training contract in second year undergrad is unheard of. I started before I'd even finished my finals, and then I finished my training contract last year. Now I went freelance as because I still had to finish my LPC exams this year, which is legal practice course for solicitors. I went a freelance police station rep, got all the contacts from all these solicitors, worked for them, finished my LPC exams, qualified as a solicitor on the 1st of June this year. All my solicitor contacts then started using me to do the magistrate's court work. Then I got a next qualification, which entitles you as higher rights, which gives you the same rights of audience in all the senior courts as a barrister. I did that course. I got that certificate through in October. But the funny thing is, I already applied to transfer to the bar, and I did it in faith. I thought to myself, you know what, God's put me on this journey, so it's something that I must do. So I got something told me, buy a wig and gown, Mark, you'll need it. And so I bought all my barrister gear, I got everything. And then I think, so for the higher rights exam, because I failed it a couple of times, it's the only exams I've ever screwed up. Most things I passed with flying colours, but I passed it. I think it was the third, fourth attempt I passed it. And they said, look, it's gonna, because I passed it in segments. So I passed the advocacy bit in March. And it was just because the first time I was feeling ill, they told me to go home and I didn't listen. Then the next time there was something else wrong. And then another time the technology breakdown. So I had a lot of bad luck with it. But I think that's because the closer that you get to your goal, the more the enemy wants to just try and mash you up.
Yeah.
But see now, the high rights thing, I had the written exam was outstanding. Now, what happened with the written exam was I was told it's going to take 12 weeks to get the result. They wrote back and sent me the certificate saying you've passed in 3 weeks' time. In 3 weeks after I passed it, I was like, wow. And I've already applied for the bar, and I'm thinking it's going to be tight timing. Anyway, what happened next is that I get a letter back, because with the bar, usually, if you're newly qualified solicitor, as I was, you need to get some kind of training, which is the pupillage. Mm-hmm. So you might be exempted from a lot of the bar transfer tests that solicitors have to do with the higher rights, but you usually have to do a pupillage. And I thought, and now some of my instructing solicitors wrote to the BSB, provided references essentially, and to say, look, I've got plenty of experience. They would instruct me again. And the chambers where I'm at, Great James Street, wrote and provided letters to the BSB, which is the Bar Standards Board, saying I don't need no more experience. I've had more experience than any second six pupil. They're giving me a straight tenancy, which again is all unheard of. So for a matter of Sunday, so 5 days later, so I got my certificate from the SRA that signed me off for my high rights on the Sunday. Yeah, they never opened on the Sunday. Someone emailed me on a Sunday from Sisters Regulation Authority, giving me confirm my high rights. Because when I first got the certificate from the university where I did my high rights, I thought it was a mistake. And then I was thinking, oh, I don't want to get to the SRA, which is Sisters Regulation Authority. Send it to them. They turned it around in 5 days. Then from 5 days from getting that certificate, I got a letter via email from the Bar Standards Board saying, we've approved your transfer, you're exempt from absolutely everything, and you don't need to do no more training to be a barrister, and we'll sign you off. And then you just need to do the newly qualified barrister's course, practitioner course within 3 years, and you just need a supervisor for 3 years, otherwise you're good to go, no pupillage. Now, the bar course is really hard. It's like 40% fail rate on the first attempt. It's really bad. Out of that, only like 1 in 14 students gets a pupillage.
Okay.
And even if you get a pupillage, you've got to get a tenancy. Mm-hmm. And I leapfrogged all of it. And I couldn't tell you, like, God has just been good.
I was going to say, you really are where you are supposed to be, because it's all of these things that have come into play. It's just like, nobody can deny this in any way, shape or form.
God's been good. Like, I leapfrogged everything. And so all my ducks just landed in a row. I was called to the bar on the 30th of November a few weeks ago, and I started my tenancy with Great James Street, which is a brilliant set the next day. And I mean, I'm loving it. Like, look, my diary's full. Like even the other day, for example, 2 weeks ago, I looked at my diary for what's going on here. Not much. This feels like the work just comes from nowhere. Yeah. Like I've gone from doing police stations to being in the mags all the time, not doing no more police stations. Now I've gone from the mags to being in the Crown Court nearly every day. As you can see, like I was in a London Crown Court, so we have these wing collars which are looks like them old 1920s butlers collars. Yes. Then we've got the barrister bands, the bands. We've got to wear that. And I've got my wig and gown. And so generally I wear a pinstripe suit, and this shirt's called a tunic. But I've been in Crown Court Friday I was in Crown Court. Today Crown Court. Tomorrow I'm going Ipswich Crown Court. Wednesday Crown Court again, and it's I'm not saying that the magistrate's work I do is getting less because it's the amount of Crown Court stuff I'm doing. Yeah. And then all these Crown Court things I'm doing are leading to trials. Obviously, COVID has slowed things down. Yeah. But I'm hoping that things will pick back up. But the funny thing is, it was COVID that got me where I got to, because in March, when I was doing the police stations, a lot of solicitors were furloughed. And a lot of them didn't want to go police stations in person. Right. I stepped in and I was brave and went in there in faith. And I started doing the murders and the rapes and all the serious offences. And then same with the magistrates' courts, a lot of solicitors were furloughed. There wasn't enough people to do the work. I stepped up to the plate, started going there. Then I started doing trials. Within 2 weeks of qualifying as a solicitor, I started doing trials. And then I got better and better at it. And then what's happened is this, because of the COVID, where I did so much work, but by the time of applying for my transfer, I must have racked up 100 court appearances. Now I think I've done about 250 since June.
Wow.
Because I'm,
Since
you know,
June.
some days since June, I've done some days I'm doing like 5 to 7 appearances in the mags. I've literally rinsed it. And honestly, my diary's full. And the thing is, I say to myself, just imagine if my DJ career, because I did well, but there's other man that outstripped me.
Yeah.
Even BBC, I did okay, I did well, but again, it wasn't. I don't think I really broke through, went clear, where you don't need to worry about anything and you're going to be a DJ for the rest of your life. No, but with this, every door has opened.
Yeah.
Like where, you know, lots in the music industry, I felt that I was blocked a lot of the time. There was all kinds of player hating going on. I've never experienced anything. People talk a lot about racism at the bar in the legal profession. I've never experienced nothing. I've had more discrimination or more problems in the music industry than I've ever had as a lawyer. Like everyone has been so nice and kind to me. Like whether they're black, middle class, whoever, the support that I've got from people in the legal profession, and this is from judges, QCs, is overwhelming. And I'm truly humbled.
You know, one of the things, just listening to your story, one of the things that strikes out to me is actually how brave it was when you were, because, you know, being a DJ, even being on One Extra, a lot of people would look at that and be like, that's really desirable. But for you to be able to look at that and be honest with yourself and say, yo, this traveling, this isn't cutting it, and saying enough is enough. That was actually like a really, because a lot of people will kind of ride that car until the wheels fall off, and then it will be the industry that tells them we don't want you no more. But it feels like at that moment you really kind of took control of your destiny. I always ask whoever comes on here, there's 2 questions that I ask everybody. The first one is, in your life at any point, what's the best advice that you've been given that kind of has always sat with you?
In my career, or in this career, I don't know, to be honest. And I know the reason I say that. The funny thing is, I've always had bad advice and I've not listened. That's the best advice, is not listening. It's the advice I give myself. So I was told, you'll never make it as a DJ. People laughed at me. A few years later, a few months after that, I was on Cool FM. The same people that told me I would never make it, the radio station crashed. Other people laughed, said, "Oh, you won't be able to go further. You know, you're just, you know, it's not going to work for you." 2 years after that, I was on BBC Radio 1 Extra for 3 years with my own show. Do you know what I mean? People told me that, you know, in school you'll never amount to nothing. I'm nobody. Someone said I'm a total walking black disaster. Wow. You know what I mean? I always had people say I'm dumb and stupid, and yet and then I didn't listen. And then, you know, I was told that I'd be crazy to represent myself in Crown Court. I didn't listen. I was told that I would struggle with dyspraxia doing a law degree. It'd be too much for me. I didn't listen. I was told that the struggle getting a training contract, it's so hard. I didn't listen. Yeah, I was told that you'll never be able to cross-qualify from a solicitor to barrister so quickly. I didn't listen. Yeah, every time I didn't listen and listen to something that's within me, I get it. Let me tell you something here. I've never had a formal job interview for any legal position. I got both my tenancy offer in Chambers, where I am now, and prior to that, my training contract over dinner. I never filled out no application form for them. I filled out one application just as a dip test because they were promising people with disabilities guaranteed interviews, but that simply wasn't true. Other than that, I've never done anything. I've never done a pupillage application, training solicitors firm application. I've just been blessed with it. And so the greatest advice for me is to listen to your heart, man. Move in faith and have faith in yourself. I think too much people want to limit you by the expectations they've got of themselves. And so that's why I'm here doing this today, is because I didn't listen. You know, if I'd have listened to people, I'd just be in some gutter somewhere and could be some alcoholic or a junkie, man. But now I've gone to this, and you know, when people try to put me down, I rise. Simple as that.
My second question was going to be, what advice would you give yourself at 16? But I feel like you've answered that. We know the answer to that. So I'll switch it a little bit, and I'll say, what would you say? And maybe it might be a similar thing, but because I feel like, so I grew up kind of Essex, East London, and you know, we've by all accounts we've grown up in similar circles. You're a little bit older than me, but very similar circles. And even when I was growing up, the idea of somebody from our circle doing what you're doing now, that would seem like, yeah, nah, that's, you know what I mean? As you said, if you had listened to people, you know, you would be thinking. So other than like not listening to what, you know, what the naysayers say, what would you say to somebody, a young person now, who feels like these areas of society, so it may not even just be law, but just areas of society where they feel like it's not open to them?
Listen, what I'm saying is that you can do anything you want. You just got to put the work in. Nothing that is good is going to be that easy to acquire. And so as much as I've had a relatively easy journey, I still put the work in with my study. And so I think to young people, I'd say we need to stop this instant gratification culture. This is where we're going wrong. We need to learn that it's about graft, yeah? And it's like that iceberg thing where we only see the success, we don't see the pain and all the rest of it below the surface of the water. And so I think that even whether you're doing music or whatever, I understand you're going to have a lot of rejections. You're going to be knocked back before you break through. So it's about perseverance, determination, but focused. Like if you've got a particular goal, focus. Do you know what I mean? But I'd say as well to young people, there's more to life than just music and sport. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people, young people, getting caught up in it. I want to be a footballer, I want to be a drill artist, whatnot. And I'm not saying these things ain't great. It's great to, you know what I mean, be creative. But we need to look beyond more sustainable things as well, and more entrepreneurial kind of activities, whether you're going to be into property, whether you're going to go into law, medicine or whatever it is that I think these young people really need to just really try to focus and know that you need to have patience to get it. Do you know what I mean? I've been impatient, and for me, this whole thing took 5 years and it seemed like an eternity. But it wasn't. It was really quite quick. But what seems long, if you knuckle down, you put your head down, we'll reap great rewards, and we'll reap great financial rewards. And so I think that's what I would give advice to any young people. Just have that determination. But I think that it starts with building a foundation, and more often than not, it starts with education. Do you know what I mean? That some people say, like you can learn on the street, and this and that. I say, no, even the people that are the engineers, the producers, the management, the people behind the music videos, the camera people, they've all studied to do what they did. And that's education. Do you know, none of this stuff was easy. And so I think there's people need to just think outside the box, but be determined and know that it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. But you will get there, but you have to have that determination and resilience, I think, as well.
Brilliant. I think that's a beautiful place to end it there. I think you summarized that beautifully. I'm really grateful for your time today. You know, like I said at the beginning, I feel like your story should be on billboards. And do you know what I mean? No, seriously, like I hope at some point there will be a book. I hope at some point there will be a film, like, because yeah, just what you've been through and what you've achieved, I feel like it's something that so many people need to know and hear that story. So I'm really grateful for you taking the time to chat with me today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. It's been good.